Sorry.
Good. We good?
We're live.
So we're live. All right. Thank you, Angela. So this is the convening of the policy committee meeting. It's 4:32 on March 18th. We have a quorum. We have Dr. Maddox and Attorney Hull and myself. Dr. Gant will not be able to join us today. So thank you to the district staff and folks who are here to help us with these policies today. I guess we'll call to order and take a look. Did anybody else look at the minutes? Can we approve the minutes from last meeting? Nicole, I saw you nod.
So moved, yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Maddox? Dr. Maddox, are you able to hear us? But you can't get out of mute. Oh, no. Well, we need to hear your beautiful voice.
I couldn't even see you all. I was hoping you could see me. I was like, no.
Well, we can see you. I can see you
Something
anyway.
happened. I lost the screen and everything, and I couldn't find it.
Oh my. Oh my.
Okay, I don't know.
Well, so Attorney Hull made the motion to approve the minutes.
Second.
Can we get a second? All in favor?
Aye.
Great. Thank you. Can we amend or adopt the agenda, please? Mr. Harris, did you have any suggestions that we change the agenda at all? I'm okay with it.
No, ma'am, no changes needed.
Okay.
I move that
Great.
we adopt the agenda.
Second.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Great. You said Dr. Thomas is on her way. We can return back to her report. I do not have a chair report other than what I presented at the board meeting last week. So we're moving forward on trying to finish up the I policies right now. I just said I don't have a report, but here's my very brief report. We're going to finish up I policies, I hope, today. We'll see. And then J policies are in the wings for next time. All right, so shall we move forward? Our first policy to discuss is JK Reg 1, or sorry, Reg 2, JKR2 and JKR. Oh, I gotta make my, yeah, so JKR2 and JKR3 are both related to crowdfunding or crowdsourcing, whatever it's called, crowdfunding. And I looked these over in the agenda setting meeting and they look pretty straightforward, but now I noticed that Mr. Pruitt has recommended that we might pick these up and put them in the D policies instead of in the J policies. Do you want to explain that, Mr. Pruitt? I mean, I think you did a good job in the document, but make the case.
Well, I don't actually have a case, but and the way the policy itself is written really suggests all these regs would be here, but the way the GSBA and way, you know, people who are used to that GSBA taxonomy would look for policies about fundraising by staff and the school itself over in D, and then they'd be looking in J, which is students, to tell them about fundraising activities by students and student groups. So we've got it all in J. And as I say, your policy overall, JK, kind of suggests that too. So I'm not recommending necessarily that we break it out because that'd be a little bit of more work than we've done here. But that's, you know, that's just some background.
Okay, we've got some chatter in the chat. Let me see. Okay, I think we're good. All right, well, so Mr. Gaskins, do you have a opinion about this, or how do you, I know Mr. Harris, did you have ideas about why we put it into the J policies?
Yeah, so actually it's funny, Mr. Pruitt, that's me and Byron Schooneman, our CFO. We actually talked about it going under DFK and being a reg under DFK R1 or R2. And then when we noticed that it was a crowdfunding, we kind of balanced between, is it a gift and bequest, like people giving donations and as you said, like to student groups, or somebody donates their car or any of those items to the district, or does it go under solicitation? So we went back and forth, and then ultimately there wasn't really any it could have gone in either, but I think we went with this one because we had the solicitations part of the policy, because it had already included GoFundMe. It just didn't have donors choose as an option. And with donors choose defining themselves as a crowdfunding platform, like you said, it kind of was just less work to kind of try to split it all out between the two different policies and just have it tucked under one.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this isn't doing anything we haven't done already. We've already been putting all this stuff in J. I'm just saying, typically you wouldn't, but that would be unraveling not just these two regs, but some stuff we've done in the past as well.
So maybe we make a note, Angela, in the policy review that when we get back around to DFK, we just reviewed it, of course, last year, but maybe next time it comes back around, we can revisit this idea. Is that just kick the can down the road, I'm afraid, but at least we can get what I understood from Mr. Harris is that this is kind of urgent that we get this fixed right away, because it's happening underneath us. And as the policy stands, what the teachers are doing, it hasn't been actually in our policy. It's outside of policy. So we need to get the policy in place.
Yes, that's correct. And I'm sorry, I didn't provide the context, but that's essentially it. The policy doesn't technically cover what donors choose, allows teachers to do, which is they can post for various supplies that they want to get donated to their classrooms. And technically our policy is that it should go through an approval process, which right now, the way Donors Choose works is you can just post without any type of approval. And so we're looking at becoming an official district partner with Donors Choose, which allow us to actually build in an approval process. So that way principals can just check off as they know what's going into the building. So it just kind of cleans up what's happening already.
Any other questions or comments about these two? I note that in JKR 3, there's a comment about some improving the wording, 3.3b.
Yeah, that was my comment, just to make sure that, and I don't think this was the intent, but it says, let's see, I guess it's section 3.3b. Prohibit cash payments to district personnel, exempting reimbursement to teachers for reasonable project costs. I guess I'd suggest the easiest thing to do would be to just remove that exempting clause, because certainly the district could reimburse teachers, but we still need the funds to come to the district first. We don't need any funds going straight to staff.
That makes sense. And I removed it on, it's funny because that was a repeat. It was actually on the other one as well, and I deleted it off of JKR2, but that was an oversight. Should have deleted it there too.
Good man.
Okay, so friendly amendment to fix that one. Otherwise, Attorney Holland, Dr. Maddox, are you okay with these two?
I am, yes.
Move them up to the board?
Yes.
Okay, so I make a motion Can I make a motion? I always forget.
You can.
Okay, I make a motion that we move JKR2 and JKR3 up to the full board for discussion, for further discussion and approving.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, great, thank you. And that was with that one amendment, right? Did I need to specify that in my policy? Okay. All right, so the next one is the field trips and excursions, which was presented to us for discussion at our last meeting, excuse me, with some minor revisions, but I wanted to chat a little bit more about field trips and excursions and how we fund them based on my experience with Cedar Shoals LSGT. And again, just to reiterate what I said last time, I found that the teachers were really hamstrung in their ability to provide experiential learning to their students and get them out of the school because of some of the policies that are in place. And I think I understand, Mr. Harris, you brought Mr. Weaver to talk about some of those issues. You just sent me a link to a Google Doc, which I haven't really had a chance to look through yet. So I was hoping we could figure out a better way of providing transportation for these field trips.
Okay, and Dr. Yeager, the document that Mr. Harris has shared with you was basically to address some of the questions that you had around using a van, using vans, which are typically 12 passenger, 15 passenger vans. And because of our funding and because of insurance reasons, we do have to go with school buses because of our funding, pretty much. And so what I did was attach the documentation and the information that is out there with regards, saying that the we have to use buses to do that. With regards to the time frame of the trips being a narrow time frame, most of that is because of our needs to provide routing to make sure that we have the routes, because our funding is based on covering routes, transporting students to and from school. So that's the reason why that was there.
Well, so I guess I understand why they are the way they are, but I'm looking for an opening to make it easier. So does that mean the only way to make it easier is to have more school buses?
Well, we have the school buses, but then we also would need more drivers, because right now the entire nation is looking for bus drivers, and that's a problem.
Okay. And what about having the teachers trained to be bus drivers and get certified?
Teachers can be trained to drive school buses. There is a certification process. Each school driver must hold a commercial driver's license, Class B, with a P passenger and an S endorsement, school bus endorsement. The state currently requires 12 hours of classroom training, 6 hours driving without students, 6 hours driving with students. And we are more than happy to do that training. As a matter of fact, we have an administrator now that's going through training to get his CDL. And he said he never knew that it took that much to be a bus driver.
I guess my question would be, is that something that can be accounted for in the board's budget? If we are asking teachers to be able to do that, to make sure that they don't incur an extra expense.
You cut off, you went back to the mute.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry, I was trying to use my space bar. So I guess my question would be about cost and finances, and whether or not that's something that could be budgeted for in the board's budget. If there's an expense associated with getting a commercial license and going through the training, is that something that can be approved by the board, or would that just be administrative? How will we make sure, or can we make sure that we're making it easy for teachers to be able to do that without absorbing the extra cost?
I'm sure there is a cost associated with the training.
The cost associated with the training is pretty much the cost for the license itself and the time that, that's required for them to do the classroom training. What I've experienced over the years is persons that are administrators typically don't have the time within their time frame to do this type of training unless it's over the summer, when it's not anything really going on, because that classroom training is an intense training. It's basically, I broke it down when I was a trainer myself to 4 hours a day, 5 days a week to get the 12 hours of training in, and then the 2 hours with driving with students and driving without students. We did that kind of on the side.
Yeah, so you can always amend the budget to put some more in Mr. Weaver's budget for whatever expense he has. Probably the bigger question is going to be, are you going to pay the teachers extra for the time they spend doing the training and or driving the bus? Of course, they're FLSA exempt, so they don't get paid by the hour. you might think it's just fair for those who volunteer to do that to somehow reimburse them. And so long as it's not, it's just something that's a once in a while, it's a minor part of what they do, then that's not going to jeopardize their status as exempt employees.
So with that, can it be set up to offer the cost of the license and the train, if that's something that the teachers can take on to do business on the side or whatever they may want to do? Can that be offered in exchange for them being able to volunteer to drive the buses to field trips if they so desire? Can we do a quid pro quo with free training for a volunteer driver?
Yeah, I mean, it's no problem. I mean, you're training them you're paying for this training and license to serve a district function. So sure, I mean, the district ought to pay for that. Whether, if they use that license also to do something for their own benefit, that's fine, so long as they, comply with the educator code of ethics. So that's not an issue, but, I think that still maybe what you're suggesting is the fact that they could maybe use that training and license to make money on the side if they wanted to is compensation enough. So, maybe not. I don't know.
Well, then I just would like to raise this question because, we have a lot of the persons that apply for jobs to be bus drivers. A lot of them cannot pay for their license. So I think we would need to be careful if we do that, because then that sends another message to those persons, and we are needing drivers. And so how would you pay for this set of people's license and not pay for someone that's wanting to come to work for you?
Oh, I didn't realize we weren't paying for the license. So if I don't have that license. If I applied to you, Mr. Weaver, to be a driver, and you approved my application, the district wouldn't pay for my license?
That's correct, because that license belonged to the person, and just what you just said, that person would be able to go anywhere else and work and drive anywhere else. One of the things that most districts have a conflict with is we will have drivers to come and get training here, but most of our drivers leave Clark County and go and drive for Athens Tech. We have no recourse to make them stay with us. And I've asked plenty of attorneys, can we ask them to stay with us or make them commit to at least a year of service? And I've always got pushback on that. I see Dr. Thomas.
I agree with that pushback.
So how is that any different? Is it because they're not certified, Attorney Pruitt? Because how is that any different than when we pay for teachers to get certification for gifted, ESOL, things of that nature? They agree that after they get that certification, they will work in the county for, I think it was 3 years. And if they don't, they just pay back the cost of that certification.
And we could do that. We could have them pay back the cost.
Yeah, I don't know why. I mean, that's what we did for years when I was at J.J. Harris. We just, we paid for them to get their ESOL and gifted endorsement. And if a teacher chose to get that through us and then walk out the door, so there was just an agreement when they signed up for those courses that they committed to 2 years, 3 years, I can't remember for certain what it was, but if they left prior to that period of time, they would just pay back the cost.
Yeah, we can do that.
Yeah, I'm very interested in exploring that.
Yeah, I didn't know we didn't or couldn't. I think that's something we can easily do that may help with our recruitment. And, if you look at the cost of that license comparable to the cost of a certification course, how much is a license, Mr. Weaver?
License is, I'm sorry, it's been a while since I did it. I'm thinking it's something like $25, $30.
Oh yeah, I mean, you're talking about.
Yeah. How about the training course? Is that something that they pay for or we pay for?
We do the training ourselves. We have in-house trainers.
Gotcha.
So Dr. Thomas, I just have a question for clarification, and I am in agreement, so I'm not trying to throw a wrench. clarification on if we do pay for teacher license, we provide the certification course. We certify them by completing the gifted, the ESOL course, and then I think they apply and pay for the license on their own. I think the same thing is true about teacher certification. The university certifies them through the program, and then they apply for the license and pay the license on their own. So I'm not saying that we shouldn't, but I'm saying that there are other groups that also pay for their own license. So we just need to be aware of that in this conversation.
So that's the same thing Mr. Weaver was saying the bus drivers do. We do the training in-house, but the actual administrative license costs the employee pays.
Right, but the course is like $3,600. So they can't get the license without having the course. So, I mean, so technically the license belongs to them. And I get that, but they're just
I got lost then. I thought Mr. Gaskins was saying there's not like this outside course we pay for, but
yeah, we pay for that course when they're teaching. What he's saying is the teachers themselves actually pay for the change in certification. And
yeah, right.
The drivers will be paying for the license. But I guess my argument is if we can pay for a $3,600 course, surely we can pay for a $25 license.
Surely we can. Surely we can.
And if we can say that, and I understand what Mr. Gaskins is saying, that the license belongs to that individual, just like that CDL would, but they can't access that teacher certification without the course. So they go hand in hand. So to me, to say you agree to work for Clark County for 6 months, which is still stretching it for $25. But if you just said that, at least you're not having a constant turnover for people. Or whatever amount of time we choose to say.
I agree.
So what needs to happen on the board's end to help this motion be put in process, or help this to be put in motion rather? Do we have any next steps as board members, or is that purely administrative? And since we've discussed it, that's something that Dr. Thomas and team can pick up.
I hear you. I think I was waiting on someone else smarter than me to answer. I mean, I would think that's something we can just move forward with, that Mr. Weaver can reach out to Dr. Blankenship and, just let her know we've had this conversation, and then she can reach out to any of us as a follow-up, Mr. Weaver.
All right, I sure will.
Yeah.
So I would like to somehow include in the policy that teachers who have this license can take their students on a field trip with available buses, and that we have set aside a certain number of buses. Mr. Weaver, it sounded like we have buses. We don't. What I heard is that there's only one bus available outside of the time between the routes. So it's a very short window, and there's only one bus.
No, we have buses. However, most of our buses are used for routes, but we can work through that piece of it. We can have a bus as long as every school in the district is not wanting to take a trip on the same day for the same amount of time. In our field trip policy, it states that I think one bus per school can use a bus during that time frame. During that, it's a particular time frame in there. I'm not quoting that correctly, but it is some parameters around it so that we ensure that we have enough buses to do routes when school is let out.
I believe the time of waiver is 2 p.m. in the policy for the extended day bus, 2 p.m. So that way, I believe it's a number.
That's correct.
Sorry, I can't see it on the screen.
Yeah,
it's right before the first offense under no eating or consumption. It says teachers must make sure they allow enough time to arrive back at the school no later than 2 p.m.
Right. So that's the problem. That's why the field trips are not happening, is because they have to be back by 2 p.m. So we need to figure out a way to either buy some more buses or not have that restriction, so that they can take kids to the aquarium and then not get caught in traffic on the way home, or whatever it is. That having to be back by 2 p.m. is the problem. So anyway, I guess
That
we
provision
toss
for
this.
exceptions not working? I do notice it says exceptions can be improved in writing by the superintendent.
So we used to have one extended day bus per day. I don't know how many requests are denied as a result of this policy. But the transportation department did provide an extended day bus. And that may be something we need to look at if we're able to have two, and even started with that, where there's one for the east side and one for the west side. I would be very curious, as we're looking to shift the policy, if we look at some data to see how many field trips are denied because we don't have the bus available. And we may be able to solve that by having one additional extended day bus and putting someone on, having a person that's always paid to run those two routes. So I would be curious to know, while I get what you're saying, Dr. Yeager, and I would hear it when I was at the building, that teachers would be like, well, dang, we can't go. But how many people have applied? Are people just not putting in because they're assuming they won't be able to get the bus?
Right.
So I would like to know, are we turning down 25 people a month because we can only accommodate 20? And then are there 25 field trips that aren't filled? I think that's kind of a good place to start too. And then look at having maybe one bus for each side of town, so we double that capacity.
I can get that data from my field trip coordinator to find out what has been denied and the reasons around it.
Okay. And I can reach out to the science teachers at Cedar that I had talked to, it's been probably 3 years now, but, confirm with them. My sense from them was they shrugged and said, we just would never get it, or it's, you have to do it so far in advance to get in, to get on the list for the right date, that there's no flexibility.
And that is true, because it does take planning and coordination for field trips. I think a lot of times it's misunderstood that drivers in particularly are part-time employees. And so we have to make the arrangements for those drivers to drive. It's not like we have drivers sitting around for 8 hours, and when anybody called, they can just call and get a driver. We can just send the driver right away. So it's the planning and the coordination of all of that.
Okay. And if the teachers have the license, then the buses are very likely to be available, that you wouldn't have to find a driver with so much notice. They could just have the bus and do the trip. Okay. All right. Well, so yeah, following on Attorney Hull's comments, do we need to put those things into this policy before we move it forward? So we postpone it, or postpone it until next time after we can work on the text of it?
I have some concerns too.
Okay.
They're after yours, but I want to have them addressed before we decide what to do with the policy.
Okay.
So I want to give you a chance to make sure that part is cleared up before I jump in.
Okay. Well, what I'm hearing is that we can help field trips happen more often if we allow the teachers explicitly to get this license, and we support them in the process of doing so. And if we get more buses designated for trips besides the one, extended day trips besides the one, those are the two ideas I'm hearing.
Okay. I think that will definitely help. And I don't want to so I hear what you're saying, Mr. Weaver, about coordinating, but I still think it's doable and reasonable. I still want to believe that part of the problem is people, as you said, Dr. Yeager, just kind of shrug their shoulders and say, well, it's probably not going to happen. And if we get 2 buses even allocated and we get that message out, because we say coordination and planning, but that, as a teacher or a building leader, you're going to have that coordination and planning anyway. You almost would never walk in and say, today that I'm taking a group of 30 kids to the aquarium tomorrow. So you have to
sure.
get permission forms, you have to get the money paid, you have to, you know, get your subs. And so that coordination and planning shouldn't take a significantly longer period of time than it would take to plan and organize a field trip anyway. So I still just keep going back to, I think a big part of it is people don't try because you've gotten frustrated or you've been told in the past that this isn't going to work. So if we need to work around trying to fix that as well and having that availability, and not, I just don't want it to be in a perception that the planning for it is that much of a hindrance, because it should be able to align time wise. That's all.
Okay. Okay, sounds good. Go ahead, Nicole.
So back when Dr. Parrish was the interim, we had a meeting and he discussed there being a committee to review field trip decisions. And that came about because the district had a kind of a standing field trip for several elementary grades to go to the TRR Cobb House under the guise of learning about Greek architecture and geometry and other things, without the understanding of who TRR Cobb was. And for those that didn't know, he literally wrote the law book on how to own a slave. And so going through tours of his home, it was just really inappropriate. And I don't feel like parents were given the full information to be able to decide whether or not they wanted their children to participate. And so it was a big brouhaha. But I was told that there was a committee in place to review field trips to make sure that they were appropriate for our children and our students that we're sending them to. And I didn't see that in the policy or the regs. So I just wanted to know, how are we safeguarding and protecting our children from being exposed to inappropriate things like that?
Go ahead, Mr. Gaskins.
Is that a question for me or Dr. Thomas, or I don't know?
Anybody, just anybody.
Okay. Well, we have a process where the principal approves the field trip, and then it comes to the district office and we approve those field trips. Now, I will tell you, when I look at field trip approvals, I look at alignment to the standards that are being taught. I can't say that there has been a field trip that we've not approved, which is not your question, but usually the principal usually filters what I guess is appropriate or inappropriate at the level, and then I just double check it and we send it to transportation to make sure that it meets those standards. I don't know if I know the example of the Cobb House is one. I don't know if there are other examples. But that is usually how we do that process. And then for out-of-state field trips or field trips that are not local, those field trips are approved by the board.
So in all honesty, my question is that a rubber stamp process, or is it something that's thoroughly checked through? Because I feel like I can make a pretty good argument for why the kids should go to McDonald's and make them align with the standards if I needed to. So is this a rubber stamp? Because I get it. I know administrators have so much to do. And so if you're handed a packet of how a field trip can be educational and beneficial and free, and not cost you anything, it's really easy to rubber stamp it. So is there a process where we're looking at this? Because even after that was supposed to be put in place, just a few years ago, we were still going to hold a social studies fair at the TRR Cobb House. So I just want to make sure we're doing something to protect our students from this. And I don't know if we need to flesh it out, if now that you have heard the concerns, there could really be a Google search performed to make sure that these are appropriate. But that is a concern I have. I think that's more geared in policy that I want to make sure we're addressing.
So to answer your first question, it is not a rubber stamp process, because we have improved the process, I would say, when those requests come to me. We've changed the form, more information, more vetting of that information. To answer that first question, the question about the Cobb House, I think we may need to have a deeper conversation about that, because I think that it's debatable, and not in a criticism or a bad way, because I think that there are some efforts to change the use of the Cobb House because of that history. And that is something that people may want to do or may not want to do. That's something that my social studies coordinator, as you know, is looking into and trying to support. So I think we have to flesh that part out, but I think that our principals do their due diligence to make sure, number one, that students have an opportunity to have these experiences, because all learning doesn't happen in the classroom. And then at my office, we really try to make sure that they're not going to McDonald's, or even like sometimes I'll get a field trip request about something for the zoo. And the zoo is very educational, but it is also age appropriate for some groups versus others. So like when you go to the zoo as a first grader, it directly aligns to what you're learning in first grade. And when you go to the zoo, when you take zoology in high school, it's different, right? And you're going for different reasons. And you may not need to go in 9th grade because that class is going to go in 10th grade. So we have those conversations with our leaders to make sure that those field trips are intentional as well as aligned to the curriculum. But I do hear what you're saying, Ms. Hull. And then the other thing that I would add is sometimes our LSGTs suggest field trips because they use additional field trip money or charter money to fund those field trips. So I think that there is another group that is also looking at how we kind of provide some things for our kids.
Thank you. And my next concern, my last concern with this, I know it's all out of my lane, is because it's an administrative matter. I'm just going to place my concern before you and we can move on. But I've heard that some of our special education students aren't allowed to participate in field trips unless their parent agrees to go. And I'm not sure if that aligns with our mission to be inclusive. And so, that's not something I'm investigating. We don't have to explore it here, but it is something that I want to bring to the attention of the administration so that it can be kind of looked at and evaluated. And those are my concerns.
So if those concerns do come to you, Ms. Hull, please just let us know the school, let us investigate, because that is not our practice. If those students are a part of the regular curriculum, like if their class is going, then they're going. And we provide the special needs buses to accommodate them if they need to go.
Thank you so much. I'm done, Dr. Yeager.
Two really good points. The only other one I had just kind of scanning through is the no more than 2 field trips per year. Is there a reason for that?
No.
I don't think there's a reason for that. I feel like we do more than that. Dr. Thomas, do you know through practice?
Yeah, I think the reason had been to attempt to curtail, for lack of a better word, some groups were spending a lot of time out of the classroom, and recognizing the importance of the regular curriculum and instruction. So the attempt was to have 1 field trip essentially per semester, so that people were not just taking trips all the time. Now, I would think that, if something came up, I recall, our teachers are actually pretty good about it, though, because it made them decide what's really beneficial and what's fun and what's something we've just always done every year versus what has academic benefit and allows students to have a text to world connection, or a content to world connection. And then there's a lot of that just takes place just because we've always gone to the pumpkin patch, right? And so what is the true educational benefit of the pumpkin patch? For some kids, and you could argue, it's like Ms. Hull said, you could argue the benefit of anything, because for many of our kids, they've never seen a pumpkin grow on a vine. So you could argue that. Is it necessarily the benefit greater? Because you've missed a whole day almost of instruction. By the time you take any field trip, you've missed a day of instruction. So I think it kind of went back just to accountability, not accountability making people do what they need to do, but accountability in terms of high stakes performance and wanting, mastery of standards, and trying to balance that. And I wasn't at the district when this was done. I'm just giving you the perspective from a building leader. Now, as a principal, my teachers would look at it and be like, yeah, is this really something that we need to do? But if something great and amazing came up, and they had already gone on 2 trips, we would never say, no, you can't go. This is an awesome opportunity for kids. We didn't know they were going to get to go do blah, 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 blah. It directly ties to what you're doing in your class and something coming up, sure, go. But I think it was an effort just to have something to give some guardrails, because people can tend to just, everybody's not diligent. And I say this all the time. We put our own work ethic and commitment to excellence on everyone else. And that's unfortunately not always the case. And unfortunately, it's not the case more than we would think is not the case. And so I think it was probably put there to give some guardrails there for how much time people were spending out of the building. That's the best explanation I can give. I didn't write it.
I would love to remove the make no more than, and maybe say should make at least 2 trips per year. I think we know so much about how much kids learn when they're out of the classroom that we need to not put any. I mean, I get the content things, but I also know that kids learn when they're out there. We just can't measure it very easily sometimes, but they are definitely learning out there. So at least that's my opinion. But I'm not the educator as you are. So I would like to revisit that idea of no more than 2. Maybe we could just scratch that line. All right, well, so shall we vote on these as is? Do we want to make any friendly changes to them?
I thought we were kind of talking about holding this one back, gathering some data as to how many of the requests were denied due to bus availability, and then maybe kind of work with it and bring it back. So that's what I thought I heard, but I am tired. So if I misheard, please speak up. I will not be offended.
Okay, so your understanding is we should postpone these till next month, and after we've gathered some data and perhaps rephrased some of the. Okay, I'm good with that. Dr. Maddox, what do you think?
Yes, was that a motion?
I guess that was.
That was a motion. I move that.
Okay, second.
All right, all in favor of postponing the field trip policy and reg until next month when we can have some more data, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. So the next one was one we also discussed last week or last meeting about the makeup opportunities. And I think we kicked it back to Mr. Gaskins to think about how he wanted to structure the timing of the makeup opportunities.
Yep, that is correct. So our conversation was around 1 week and 2 week. And so I got a little feedback, and we think that 2 weeks, no more than 2 weeks, is appropriate.
Okay, so let's see the wording. So this was just a review only. So how do we need to fix the wording? It says all makeup work should be completed by the student and returned to the teacher within 1 week after the student receives the makeup work.
Yes.
So just leave it alone. The 1 week is good. Or no, did you say 2 weeks?
We said 2 weeks. Yes. Mhm.
Okay, so Angela, I guess that needs to be changed. It's the high school, second paragraph, second line. 1 week should be changed to 2 weeks. And you were okay with the rest of that paragraph, Mr. Gaskins? In the event a student is absent from school for more than a week, the student should complete all makeup work within the same number of days a student was absent. You're okay with that one?
I'm okay with that one if the group is okay. I didn't find any issue with it.
So it's just the 1 week to 2 week change. Okay. So this becomes a revise instead of a review, with the one change. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Take a motion to move it forward.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next one was IHAR1. This was the grading systems that we were trying to figure out how to rephrase according to the law, what insufficient progress or what was the wording? Hang on. Minimum passing score.
Yeah, that was my fault. So I looked at that after the meeting, and I am so Mr. Gaskins explained that we're using our waiver power as a charter district to not have to assign numerical grades in 4th and 5th. And I looked at that, and I'm satisfied he's right, unless we know something specific that the Department of Education's taking a different view on that. I'm fine with it. I just didn't know that was how we were doing it until the meeting last time.
Okay, so we do have the waiver. Did you have to apply for the waiver, or we just say that we're using the waiver?
No, we just say we're using it. That's right.
Okay. So then this one goes back to being review only, because we're going to remove that yellow sentence. The yellow sentence was created to fix that problem, which we don't need to fix.
Unless Mr. Gaskins knows something otherwise, I'm fine with just removing it.
No, sir, I'm fine with removing it as well.
Okay. Angela, you got that? All right. So shall we vote on IHAR1 as amended?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. It's 5:20. We're on IDA. This is a basic program policy. We have not looked at this one before. It's a review only. It's 2 paragraphs. Mr. Gaskins, no to.
I'm sorry, you were in and out on my end, Dr. Yeager. Did you ask?
Oh, I'm sorry. So IDA was a review only. It's just 2 paragraphs, the basic program. There's no changes to it. You're fine with that one?
Yes.
Okay, and the same for the IDA Reg 1.
Correct.
Okay. Any questions or concerns from board members about these two? Last reviewed on the 2013, I think. Yeah. No concerns? All right, shall we move them forward?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. So IHEB is academic achievement, and very, very minor changes to this one, just adding or designate after superintendent. Dr. Thomas, you're okay with that change? Is she still with us? Yes, she is.
Yes, ma'am. I'm sorry. I was nodding my head, but you can't hear that. Yes, that's fine.
Okay. All right. Any other questions or concerns about this one? Academic. It's actually about academic acceleration, not academic achievement, but
Within a grade.
skipping a grade. Yeah. All right. All in favor of moving this one forward, or shall we have a motion to move it forward?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. And then there's the reg that goes with it. Sorry, I should have tossed that into the vote. That was a review only. That's quite an extensive policy about how we make the decision to move someone forward. Attorney Hall, did you have a chance to look through that? I know that's a concern of yours.
My concern was more of the honor grade, the honor graduate policy.
Okay.
I do see a slight grammatical change that needs to happen, Dr. Yeager. Under
Okay.
number 3, it says Director of Gifted Services. It should say Coordinator of Advanced Content and Gifted Services.
Okay, I think that's a technical change. Well, I guess we can just put it on and fix it accordingly. Okay.
Mr. Gaskins, could you repeat that title?
Coordinator of Advanced Content and Gifted Services.
Thank you.
All right. I'm okay with that one as amended. Shall we move it forward as well?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we have policy II, testing programs, with a big chunk deleted about special ed students. The rest of it remains in place. Mr. Gaskins, do you want to, I think didn't we talk about this one before? Or maybe we didn't.
We talked
had
about
to do with yeah, we did talk about this one before. Go ahead.
We talked about this, and I believe IDF. And if I'm remembering the policies by letters, then I'm doing way better than I did when I started. But there is a section about graduation requirements.
Okay.
And we have included the graduation requirements for our special education students. This is a little antiquated, and then it's a duplication, so we took it out.
Okay. Great. Yeah, I think it was the same kind of language in some other policy. You're right. Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
All right. Should we look at IIB, test administration, which is sort of related? It's a review only, and then we can move them both up together. No changes to the test administration policy. Let's see, this was last reviewed in 2011. Is there any, the issues in Atlanta not too long ago about cheating on tests? And I mean, this policy sort of tries to account for those issues, right? With the secure storage. Do we need to add anything in response to those problems in other districts? Mr. Pruitt, do you think? You know what I'm talking about?
I do know what you're talking about. Yeah. No, I mean, state law was beefed up in response to that.
Okay.
And
okay.
And these policies are basically just saying we follow the law. So.
Okay. Okay. That sounds good. Thank you for that. All right. So a motion, any other questions or concerns about II or IIB? Move them up.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, then there is controversial speakers, which was a review only. I liked this policy pretty well. So the school principal is the one who makes the decision about clearing them. Is that an appropriate level if it's a very controversial person? Do we need to lift the level up? Superintendent?
I'm reading again.
And I think the reason that it or I imagine that the reason that it's the school principal, because the teacher is engaging with the speaker for their classroom as is really as a part of a civics lesson, as I imagine. So they are trying to make sure that there are both sides of the issue, or both people that can present the sides of the issue. So I think that's why it goes to the school principal, because it's an instructional part, not a controversial speaker, maybe like on like a media level, as I imagine.
Okay.
That makes sense. And I think that's important, just to make sure that the students have both sides, all sides, and are able to engage in critical thinking. So that makes sense that if it's tied to an instructional purpose, that it will go to the principal.
Now, I would add that I would imagine in practice that if a principal is concerned about making that decision, they will engage as many people as possible, including myself and Dr. Thomas, for the final decision.
Sounds like experience.
Do we need to add a sentence that suggests or recommends? So we offer to take the burden from the principal? No, it's okay. Don't fix it if it isn't broke.
I would give our principals the ability to recognize whether or not they needed to go up the food chain or not.
Okay, sounds good. All right. Let's see. The school ceremonies is a very minor edit, just changing superintendent to superintendent or designate.
I guess sorry, you didn't take a motion on the previous.
Oh, thank you. A motion to push IKB forward.
So moved.
IKBA. So moved. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving forward. IKD is school ceremonies and no major change. This is the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment of reflection. And
so really we mean like ceremonial kinds of acts rather than ceremonies. Is that what this one is?
I guess so. It's sort of named strangely, isn't it?
It is. It is.
Strangely, it's about the Pledge of Allegiance and the moment
of silence.
Yeah.
Like when you read it and it says ceremonies, so I guess it's a ceremonial. Yeah.
Yes, I agree with Dr. Thomas on that.
I was just, when I read it earlier, I was thrown, and then I remembered why.
So, Mr. Pruitt, we're not allowed to change the names of these policies, or are we?
Well, it's not a legal thing. It's just that, back when the GSBA assembly program doesn't let you change the names. Your current board docs that you're using lets you change the names. Now, as some of you know, I'm sort of an advocate for, not that I have any role to be an advocate, but I kind of like the GSBA assembly stuff for other reasons. So we might not want to fool with the titles just in case we want to go back to it at some point.
Okay. And Dr. Thomas, I did not give you a chance to give your update if you wanted to update us on that or the assembly question.
Yeah, so we are still finishing out this contract because the way the contract is set up with board docs. So if I'm correct, Mrs. Palmer has planned an overlap time to end one and begin one, start working on assembly, but before we actually end our contract with board docs. So she has been working on that, and we've talked a lot to Julie Rame, and I think his name is Sam with assembly, but we've had several meetings with them to try to, or to begin the process of a transition.
And you looked very tired when you said all of that. It sounds like I'm reading your body language.
And it only because, Lisa was like, "It's a good time," and I was sitting here thinking when I had my head down about her talking about like it's been such a busy time and wanting to do it when she's not having competing things that she needs to switch over. It's going to be fine. Lisa's good, and it's going to be fine. We talked about it just last week, and It's going to be fine. And I know there are tremendous benefits, especially for policy and access to those resources. And it's going to be fine.
So probably in the next 6 months, you think?
By the end of
Okay.
the school year, we would have transitioned.
Okay, that's great.
Well, not this school year. I'm sorry, this calendar year. I'm sorry.
Calendar year. Okay,
Yes.
sounds good. Okay, any other comments about this observances, I guess is really the word. I'm okay with it, especially since it's state law again too, right? It complies with law.
That's right.
Okay, do we want to move it forward?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. All right. Then we get to the last two. Okay, goody. So this one is about recess. I had some concerns about recess. Do we want to talk about those, Mr. Gaskins?
Yes, I'm not trying to be controversial by rescinding this policy because we actually have another policy that calls out recess. So this is unstructured break time. I don't know why we have an unstructured break time policy, but there is another policy and it's R1, which is a wellness policy. And within that wellness policy, it actually calls out recess and it talks about the 15-minute recess time, which is part of the state policy on that.
Wait, are the students only getting 15 minutes of recess?
A minimum of 15 minutes on days where they don't have PE, which I think is the state policy.
So I'm pretty sure that's not enough.
And actually, I think it used to be, and then the law was changed to actually just leave it solely up to local districts. I don't think there's a state requirement anymore. But I tell you where this weird language comes from is from that law. And there's this statute that you see in my memo part there that each local board shall allow written policies allowing or prohibiting unstructured break time in K through 8th grade. So, but yeah, recess is really what we're talking about.
So the reason and that I am recommending the rescission of it is because I think as we read this, we think recess, and if we want to revive the recess policy, it would be my recommendation that we revise it in R1.
I guess a question too would be, would this, so if a student had, sorry, we're double teaming with the kids today. If a student had or needed a break per an IEP or a 504, would this policy prohibit or contradict the special education laws that would allow them to exercise that? And with this, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry to cut you off. It would not, because the IEP, it would trump it. It's a legal document that would trump it.
And does like GLAD time and JAG time, does this fall into this category, or is that something else?
I don't think it falls into this category. I mean, those are school practices, which we give them autonomy as school principals and administrators to create those times. I mean, we have morning meeting times and cool down times at our elementary schools that they would be able to continue to do.
Thank you.
Well, so I guess I should revisit our EEE, but I mean, one of the things I noted in this policy was something about recess being withheld for disciplinary reasons, and that is completely inappropriate. We need to fix that. So I guess if we rescind the whole thing, we rescind that. But is there anything in the other policy that talks about not using recess as a punishment or lack of recess? I guess I can go visit that policy.
Yeah, it says that it says school staff shall discourage the withholding of recess as a consequence.
Yeah, I think EER1 is actually, I think I remember us talking a bit about this one, actually seems to be much more aligned with what I imagine are the committee's values than the policy that's being rescinded. So this one actually says discouraging, EER1 discourages teachers from taking away recess as a disciplinary action, versus the one we're reviewing now actually says the opposite. So
yeah, somehow I remember us having that conversation.
Yeah.
I'm a little brain dead, but I do remember us having that conversation.
So, all right, well, I guess I wouldn't mind fixing this one, since it's also unstructured break time, but I will, I haven't done my homework to check EER1. So I would either recommend that we postpone the decision on this till we can go do that, or yeah, I guess that's what I'm going to recommend, that we postpone the decision on that.
So moved, I agree with that.
Okay.
Second.
All right, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, sorry, Mr. Gaskins, we're gonna kick this can one more time down the road.
I was so close.
I know you were close. Yeah, you were close, but not quite close enough.
Down. I was so close.
Yeah, sorry about that. I just really think recess is important, and I think we, as a board, want to make sure we've got what we want written properly. So
I'm in agreement with that, and I would add, I don't know, and I can defer to Dr. Thomas or Mr. Harris about who is responsible for the E policies. I could help revise that policy as it relates to recess. And maybe we bring those back at the same time if needed. Okay. And then we can determine if one needs to be rescinded, if we beef up the other one, or do we just have them in both places?
Okay. That sounds really great. Thank you for that.
The EE one is mostly about nutrition. So that's going to be in Paula's shop, as they say. And I mean, just my 2 cents worth. I'm kind of wondering why it's there at all, because it looks like that stuff would be in IEDA instead. And when you start putting things into more than one place, then it's hard to remember where they are if you want to change one.
I agree.
Okay, so maybe one thing we might want to do is pull the recess part out of EER1 and put it into this one. Okay. All right, well, let's do that. Let's postpone this one for now, what we just did, and bring it together with EER1 and bring it back next month. Is that okay with you, Mr. Harris? Put it on the agenda for next month after we look at it. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, so our final agenda item, God help us, is the board committee revision. How are we feeling about this, ladies?
I'll put my head back in my hand again.
Dr. Gant's not here, so we can push through without her. She didn't show up to her peril. So anyway, what do you think, Max, Attorney Hall? No comment?
No, I mean, I guess I get the benefit of not knowing another structure. So this is what I'm coming into. So I'm deferring to Dr. Maddox and to Dr. Yeager and your wise experience being on the board, and I'm claiming newbie privilege.
That's funny.
Okay. So, all right, Dr. Maddox, let's talk about this. Let's see what we want to do. I mean, we still have to get it to the full board and get their approval. So there's no guarantee. I guess the question is this current form good enough to move it up for a work session discussion? Or do you think we need a little more work on this before we send it up? I shared it with the full board and no one has commented. So I'm kind of tired of putting it out there and not like getting any result. And we really need to fix this because we said we would fix it. So, yes.
I know that Ms. Gallagher and Mr. Davis are working on the Government Relations Community Collaboration Committee. We had government relations on Tuesday, and we did spend significant time talking through the purpose of government relations. And the conclusion of that meeting was that Mr. Davis and Ms. Gallagher would get together outside of the meeting and just kind of brainstorm more, so that way they could have a description together. So at least that one I could comment on.
That was the one I was going to comment on as well. That's the one I could speak to.
Okay. Please do.
Yeah, and that was, because so it was just the same thing that Mr. Harris said, that we spoke about it at government relations. And I did have a question at that time, now whether I can still articulate it today. It was just more around, because I understand the purpose, because we're looking at our strategic priorities. But would the goal of this committee still be primarily to work with our governmental entities and to be involved in legislation and legislative agendas, or?
Yeah.
Okay. So I wasn't really, that was the only part I was uncertain about, was when we say community collaboration, the government is a part of the community, but I didn't know. We spent a good bit of time talking about the operational work of community collaboration versus the work of a board committee. So that was just the only kind of gray area for us there.
Would it solve it or make it more concrete to say something like government and community collaboration and just stick the word government in there?
Well, so Mr. Harris, I think, recommended that we change the committee to community and government relations. Isn't that what you recommended, Mr. Harris? Did I get that right?
Yeah, I like that.
Government and community relations.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that helps. Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
And I'm looking at this draft. I'm sorry, I didn't catch it very well before. It doesn't quite match the thing I sent out, Angela. So I need to maybe work with you a little bit. Like there shouldn't be a property committee anymore, and it's still hanging out down there. And I'm trying to check the text side by side. Policy committee is the same. Fiscal responsibility should have finance committee and property committee.
Go back and forth on this.
Yeah.
But the only thing with me is with the the property committee, because I wasn't sitting on my screen, so I thought it was gone. So that's good.
It should be gone. It should be gone. It should be fiscal responsibility merges the finance committee and the property committee. That was the plan.
If you do that, are you going to add some language specifically about property to the content of?
I did, and so that's not there. That's what I'm missing. That's what I'm missing. It should be in there.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, something's missing. Something didn't get put in. Let me pull up my original. If I can find it. Where did I put it?
I know that I know those two committees right there. Those two, for some reason, I don't know. I guess I struggle with us needing those committees because a lot of times they have to be in executive session, and it's like, I feel like I'm missing something very important, with the finance committee and the property committees. But I can live with it.
Yeah. So in the chat is what I think. If you accept all the changes that I recommended, that's the new fiscal responsibility committee text. It says it provides guidance and recommendations to the board in the oversight of internal and external accounting, like the finance committee does. And then the second paragraph is, shall also study any property issue referred to the committee by the board and report back to the Board of Education with a recommendation, and also review all facilities on an annual basis. So it was simplified, but it kept property in their corner or in their wheelhouse.
And if I can stick my neck out for just a second to address, and I hear what Dr. Maddox is saying, and that's legitimate. The counterpoint to that is that these property decisions, acquiring and selling property, are one of the, that's one of the very few things that we can discuss in executive session before we go public with it. And there's reasons for that. When you're dealing with the pub, dealing with financial decisions like that, you don't want everybody knowing until you're ready for everybody to know. So it is helpful, just sort of as part of that. It's common and helpful to have a smaller group of people who vet it first, and then it only goes to the bigger group if it passes that first muster.
Yeah. I think there's still definitely room for like vetting some of these property things through a subcommittee rather than having to have those conversations only at the full board level. And I know Mr. Fisher, at least when he had a chance to offer his opinion, he agreed with that. So, and I know there's times when some board members really just want the conversation to go straight to the full board, but sometimes it really would not be an efficient use of time. So, okay. So what we've just done is put one paragraph about property committee. Is that what you updated, Angela? Okay, thank you. And I was trying to see the other ones.
Are we still waiting on Mr. Davis and Ms. Gallagher to come up with a description for the government and community relations or collaboration committee?
So yeah, I guess I would ask, so I didn't make that meeting this week because I had a proposal due at 5 o'clock that day. So I was up to my eyeballs in that, but I guess is it your feeling, Mr. Harris, that we should wait for the text from them, or were they okay with this text?
I imagine, and Dr. Thomas, correct me if I'm wrong, I think the text will change. There was, again, we had quite a bit of discussion about the purpose, what exactly the Government and Community Relations Committee does, the outcome, what are we hoping to achieve? So I think, it was much more operational on the community side. And then I think we switched over to talking about legislation, the 2 meetings per year. So I assume that, or I'm going to predict that some of this text will change. I can't imagine that they're going to get together and nothing will change, because there seemed to be some good discussion of what the committee could be.
I agree. And I heard from Ms. Gallagher a little bit afterwards, and she was just kind of seeking ways to fine tune the purpose of that committee and to better define the work.
So do you think the best way to do this is to send it up and figure out that wording in time for the work session and talk about it at the work session? Because we kind of need to get this moved along, given the timing. We had said it would be ready for our April work session. Mr. Harris, what do you think?
I'm happy to follow up with Mr. Davis and just ask if he can have it to us, by early next week, if him and Ms. Gallagher plan on meeting then. And then I don't know the appropriate process to add it to this policy after the committee meeting, or is that an amendment that you bring forth to the board at the work session? I don't know the process, but if we can get the language, I'm happy to add it in or send it to you all, whatever you wish.
Yeah, I mean, as long as you have that language by the regular meeting, that's fine. I mean, the board would want
send it up. Go ahead, Mr.
Yeah, I was saying the board probably would like to have at least a draft of that for the work session, but it can always be modified even at the work session or that week after, just as long as it's ready by the time the board gets it at the regular meeting.
Okay, so it would be okay, you think, Mr. Pruitt, if we move this up as is with the minor revisions that we're fixing right now, and then or change the paragraph for the government and community relations at the work session?
Yeah, I think that's fine.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Great. Then we at least get the discussion on the work session agenda. All right. Guess what? It's 5:51 and we're done.
I have other policies we could look at if you like.
No.
Bye.
I did want to ask real quick, Ms. Franklin, if she's had any luck with reviewing. We asked you last time we saw you to review some of the ways that boards replace members that depart before their session is over. So while you're here, if you don't mind just updating us where you're at with that.
Yeah, I haven't found much actually, and the couple of things that I have found have been pretty similar to what we already have. So I'll keep looking.
Okay, great. Thanks for the update.
I haven't really found anything yet, of course.
Okay, great. Thanks.
I don't know if y'all have seen my comment on that. I won't repeat it if you have, but remember what this filling vacancies on the board. Are you talking about committees or the board itself?
No, the board itself, dealing with the issues of how we replace board members.
So that's purely a matter of state law. So what you have now is word for word, other than that last little interpretation sentence, out of your local legislation, which is passed by the Georgia General Assembly. There's a statute that says that has how that works, unless you have something in local law otherwise. So we have something in local law otherwise. I suspect, don't know, haven't talked to them. I suspect if you talk to any of your local delegation, they will say, look, we're not going to re-customize something for you. We already have this general statute that we're trying to move everybody to. So if you aren't happy with your local law, we're happy to just take that out of your local law so that you'll default to the same general law that everybody else in the state, or most other districts, follow anyway.
Okay. I guess maybe what we're looking for is a reg that discusses the process by which, under the circumstances of replacing a board member that departs at a time that cannot have an election, the appointment of the board member. I think that's the issue. And so maybe that's not changing that policy, but adding a regulation that sort of works through the how. Because I know that was the problem in the past.
Yeah,
so,
I agree with that.
So maybe that's creating a new wheel for ourselves. How do we want to go about that process? But okay, we'll kick that off to another day. Thank you, everyone. Shall we adjourn?
I have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Just really quick. Can we, at our next policy meeting, discuss policy regarding public comment? And we've done extensive research on it and looked at what area, not just our RISA area, but looked at the Atlanta area and other places to see how they handle public comment. And I would love to at least get that as a discussion in our policy.
Yeah, I had it in my notes that you brought up last month, but I didn't see any. Is there a draft revision, or do you want us to look at a potential revision? How do you want?
I can do it. I just knew you all had a lot on there, but I think we should probably get it on there. So we can work on that together.
Okay.
Someone on my team with me. We'll do it. Lawrence, make me do it.
On it.
We have a lot of the information that we can pull from to at least bring a draft, and then we can discuss it, tear it apart, put it back together again. But I do, so I can, we can get together and then I'll get that to you, Dr. Yeager.
Great. That's great. Thank you.
And not to insert myself where I'm not welcome, but I'd love to have a chance to look at that and maybe talk about it too, because there are First Amendment implications there, and there's a fairly recent federal case out of Walker County about public comment at school boards. So yeah.
Okay.
And this is why our school board attorneys are the bomb.com.
You can just write it if you want to, Mike. Just I will just.
All I know
is we're one of the only school districts in the state, so I don't know how they get by with it, but that allow for 3 hours of public comment. So I don't know the answer, but there's got to be a better way, and no one else is doing. I mean, we have looked extensively, so I don't know if everybody's being illegal or what, but
no, I mean, time limits are not illegal. That's not unconstitutional in itself, but like I say, there's just there's nuances there as to how you apply them. So
I will get with you, let you see what we have, and we'll share it.
I appreciate it.
And my 17-year-old who had to watch that board meeting for his class would really like us to alternate who reads the letters. Every letter has to be a new person to read it. Otherwise, it gets really boring. So anyway, all right. Well, we'll look forward to that. Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.